Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Option Menu Crew podcast. This is episode 32. Your crew members today are myself, Ryan. How's everyone doing? And Ed.
Hey, well, today is mobile games, which is great because I get an excuse to talk a lot about Apple. And I don't know if people know, but I am a big fan of Apple. So it's rare that they come up in the gaming talk, but today is the day for that.
So today's topic is going to be the last in the what's been an ongoing series of specific platform discussions. The series discussion started after E3. We decided to do this series of episodes because we wanted to kind of focus in on each platform after this current E3 and just kind of see where they are, where they're going, how we feel about them, and what we'd want to see in the future. Especially with a new generation of consoles coming out and big changes coming in the PC market, thanks to like Valve and the Steam Deck, other things, streaming, so on and so forth. But that's affecting all sorts of different parts. You can go back and listen to those previous episodes. We started with Nintendo, then did PlayStation, Xbox, PC went live, and now we're doing mobile. And then we're going to go move on to other types of topics, and we'll probably eventually do another series of these, but we're going to wait till it's a significant distance or whatnot. As Ed said, we're talking about mobile games today, and that's going to include both Apple, Android, and just the smartphone scene in general and how that goes. Because Windows Microsoft tried a Windows phone for a while with their own dedicated OS, but that kind of faded out. Should have had a cameo of Mark on here to talk about that because he was a Windows phone guy. Do you know that?
No, I did not. I didn't know anyone was a Windows Phone guy.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I admired the Windows Phone's designs, not so much the operating system, but I'm sure I would have been fine with it considering it would have had Windows integration. Um, so it just didn't work out. You're trying to compete in a market that's already pretty saturated between Apple with its iOS and not Microsoft, uh, Android, which is owned by Google, and all those different forms. I remember Android having all those different names for their different versions of Android. I don't think they even have. I don't know if they have those names still. They like different types of candy, I think.
I think they still have the dessert names. I think there was like donut. I don't know what they are anymore, but I
Yeah.
think they still go with the dessert names.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to start out with the episode is just talking about our background experience with mobile platforms and where we're at. So for myself personally, I started out with Android. I think I started out with some like no name. I can't even remember what like the first quote unquote smartphone I had was. And it was still a dumb smartphone. It was cheap. I was in college. My parents just let me get something with a touchscreen, which was nice. And then eventually I got a Android. I think it was a Droid phone, literally one of the Droid branded phones, and it was all right. It was one of the bigger ones, but it was slow and clunky. It was definitely not as good as when the iPhone 3G came out. I thought it was, but that's just because I couldn't afford an iPhone at the time, and I made excuses for it. But it was fine. It was good. It introduced me to a lot of things, and I did some gaming on it. Just mobile gaming at the time for that, plus being able to do a lot of side-loaded emulators, all things we're going to get to in this episode. And then I finally was able to get an iPhone. Really enjoyed the experience, and uh, then I stuck with the iPhone. I currently have an iPhone XS, and the main reason I've kind of stuck with iPhone instead of switching back to Android to not to deal with something to have the more customization options and being able to sideload emulators and stuff like that is because and it's a very personal reason, is mainly because now pretty much all my family and specifically my mom has iPhone, and I'm the the IT service. So I wanted to make sure I have the device that she's using, or at least the closest thing to it, in order to make sure that whenever she calls me and has a problem, I can answer her questions because I can look at my device and go, well, it should be here. It should look like this. And if it doesn't, then that's an issue. So it's pretty much very personal for that. And I don't know, like I'm kind of entrenched in the ecosystem now, I guess. I feel like I could still switch out if I really wanted to, but I'm not sure. I am comfortable. I won't deny that I am comfortable with the Apple interface, even though it has weird quirks like not being able to freeform customize your app layout on your different homepages, but that's an extremely first world problem to have. So, but what's not a first world problem is that our podcast is on several different platforms now for listening, podcast only things. So I wanted to get that out at the beginning of the episode. I meant to say that a lot sooner, but I'm just going to say it now to get it in there. So if you can find us on YouTube as always, but we did get ourselves listed on a bunch of other ones, and I just want to make people aware, since we probably still have a bunch of new listeners. We're available for audio only listening on technically YouTube videos, still audio only, but regardless, downloading on podcast apps. We're available on the following platforms: Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. So feel free to listen to us wherever you like. We appreciate likes, comments, reviews, etc. You know, we're going to keep doing this. We're having a lot of fun, and we're hoping to engage people more and figure out some. We have our own list of topics, but we're also interested in suggestions for what people care about, and we're still experimenting with that stuff. But now that I've got that message out of the way, Ed, go ahead. What's your experience with mobile operating systems been like?
Well, my first smartphone wasn't Android or iOS. I actually had a BlackBerry back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Not sure what. Yeah. Um, those things had great keyboards. I mean, it almost missed like those physical keyboards, but now everyone's used to touchscreen, so it's not
Yeah.
really that big a deal. But shortly after that, I got the original Droid, the one that was all big about how it was going to be this iPhone killer, like it did everything that the iPhone didn't. And I had that one for a while. I think after that I got a Nexus phone, and then I think the last Android phone I had was the One Plus One, that original like flagship killer. So I had a lot of fun with those Android phones because I was big on rooting my phones and putting custom ROMs, different all this different software on it. Um, but I did end up switching to iPhone at the insistence of other people in my life. It was not my idea, but I've
Mm.
I've kind of been happy with iPhone for a while. Now I'm pretty like entrenched in the Apple ecosystem. I had like the iPhone 6s to start with. Now I have the iPhone 10, and I'm kind of feeling like I want a new iPhone this year, but I've been like, we'll see what the new one is this year, but it might push me over the edge. Um, now I have the iPhone, I have AirPods, I have an iPad, I have Apple TV, I have the MacBook, I have an Apple Watch. So like I'm all in with Apple in terms of the ecosystem, and I I like it a lot. And part of the reason, at least I wanted to do this mobile gaming episode, was because earlier this year, um, I think with I bought an what did I buy? Some Apple product. Oh no, I bought a new MacBook, and with that came a trial subscription of Apple Arcade for 3 months, and I tried that, and it was good timing because what was coming out at the time, they had a bunch of new games on the platform. One of which was Fantasian, the um,
Mm-hmm.
new uh, RPG by the creator of Final Fantasy. What is his name? Sakaguchi, I think.
Hironobu
Um,
Sakaguchi,
yeah, yes.
affectionately referred to as
And
the Gooch.
yeah, and I played the first half of that, which I really liked. The second half just recently came out like a week or two ago, so I got to get around that at some point. But um, the 3 month trial, I tried a bunch of different games, and I kind of had fun just trying new things. Like part of the nice thing about a subscription service like that is you don't have to really commit to any one game. You get to try a bunch of stuff, and sometimes something sticks, and if you get bored with it, you try something else. um and I guess we've already gone over this in a previous episode about subscriptions, but I'm kind of starting to come around to the value of just having a library that you don't necessarily have to pay for individual games, and you can try a bunch of different things.
You want to tell them
Um,
what happened in the last week,
oh
last 2 weeks?
yeah, what happened the last 2 weeks? I happened to be browsing Twitter, which if you don't want to buy things on impulse, you probably should not be subscribed to Twitter accounts like Wario 64, because you'll just open the Twitter app, and they'll have posted about something that is this limited time deal, and then you get all the FOMO building up inside you, and you click on it and you're like, oh, it's still available, I got to take advantage of it. But I
You,
ended up getting a Xbox Series X with Game Pass, and it's been fun.
you,
So I'm eating my own hat, aren't I?
you're so right, actually, because I wanted to say something. I enjoy browsing Twitter and seeing all the gizmos and toys that I'll probably never buy, but I have to admit also a Twitter ad is what made me buy my new laptop. I saw the ad for Asus's ZenBook Pro Duo with the OLED screens, and I was like, "Ooh, let's check this out." I'm probably not going to buy this, but let's just check it out just for fun, because OLED on a laptop is sounds dope. And yeah, I looked it over. I like the spec sheets. I'd been thinking about getting a laptop for a while. And Ed, you and I have been talking about you getting modern console, the current gen consoles, new TV, etc. I've been talking about to you wanting to get like a new laptop or some other gizmos here and there, and then we both finally pulled the trigger on a bunch of new stuff. So it's so I guess ads, right? But back to
Yeah,
subscriptions and Apple
some of it,
Arcade.
yeah. Yeah, well, the subscription to Apple Arcade has been fun. And I kind of go on and off over whether I want to keep it, because sometimes I feel like I'm not playing it that much, but there's some games I really like on it, so it's like I can see the value, but I like it. I like
Mhm.
the options. And one thing I like about Apple Arcade versus Game Pass is I don't think games get removed from Apple Arcade. Like, every game that's been there from the beginning is still there.
Hmm.
Um, so it is like a permanent library that, once they add it to Apple Arcade, it pretty much stays there. So that's nice.
Well, there is two different situations there. Microsoft has its own game studios that it owns, and the first party titles, until the future proves us wrong, are going to stay there. But third party offerings are
Hmm.
going to come and go, and that's the Netflix model. That's what happens. There's Netflix original stuff that's probably
Yeah.
never going to disappear, and then all the third party stuff is there to add value and make deals over time, et cetera, to get people to subscribe to the platform. It sounds like Apple, they don't really have their own game studios at all, or no, like they have obviously the dedicated development teams that consider like their graphics processors and CPUs and like gaming interfaces for the hardware, but they don't actually have like a studio any studios. They just make deals with like third parties. They do like second party deals basically all the time, right?
Yeah, I guess they're publishing these games, and a lot of them are exclusives to Apple Arcade, or at least on mobile. Some of them end up on like Switch or PC, but they never end up on Android. Um, and some of the games are just like paid versions, or like premium versions of a game that's already free or paid. So you might see, like, one popular puzzle game on iPhone is like Monument Valley, and you can buy that for $3, but you can get like the version of Apple Arcade that's included. So now they're starting to include games that are already just on mobile, and you can buy them, or you can get them as a part of Apple Arcade. But a lot of them are originals that are only on Apple Arcade. And they also have some games that actually came from consoles or are also on consoles. Like they're just adding I think Monster Hunter Stories, the first one that was on 3DS, is coming
Oh,
to iOS.
oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a Professor Layton game that's coming that I think was on Switch. So they're getting some games that are like, console games. There's some indie games like what is it, like Baldo? Have you heard of that one? I don't know if you heard
Yes,
about that, but that was
I
some
have heard
indie.
that one.
But that one just came out on Apple Arcade. I just saw it when I was browsing today. And a lot of these would be better with a controller. I mean, I guess you can play them with on-screen controls, but I don't know if you'd want to. But they're still putting more games out. The other thing that's nice about Apple Arcade is it's cross-platform with Apple. So all these games, or at least most of them, you can play them on iPhone, you can play them on iPad, you can play them on Apple TV, and you can play them on Macs. And they all have cloud saves. So, you play on one and you go over to the other device and almost instantaneously you have your save. Um, and if you run out of space and have to delete a game, the save's always there on the cloud, which um I mean that's another thing that's nice. They're doing a lot of things in the right way that the Game Pass is and Xbox, where you play your game on an Xbox, you play it in the cloud, you play it mobile, like your save is all there. So, um, but I'm just it's a good service. And I think the value just keeps getting better because they just add more games to it. And I don't think any game has gone off the service because I guess they make the deals that they are there in perpetuity. Either they are paying to publish this game or they're just making a deal to put it on there. Probably part of it is like they're smaller games, so they probably don't have to pay out as much per game as Xbox does to keep their games on Game Pass. Because I'm sure those AAA games to get them in the Game Pass catalog are very expensive.
Yeah. And like we've said before with like Game Pass, so Apple Arcade solves that issue of like if you want to try games before you buy them, then you have an option to do that. However, mobile's got a very unique situation when it comes to free to play, and I do want to get more in that, but let's touch on some of those other smaller points. Um so the like touchscreen gaming, that I still feel weird about playing touchscreen. I think there are some games that are really good for touchscreen, and when you build for touchscreen, they're amazing. I've played the Room series on mobile. I've played the first three. I have the fourth one purchased, but I haven't played through it yet, and that's just on me. I just had to find time to play it in between everything. But those games are great on touch. They've got a few little flaws here or there based on like some gimmicks they go for, but overall, they're built for touch and they're amazing. I've also played some games that are just like turn-based RPG menu stuff, and that's fine. You're just selecting menus. There's nothing special to that. You can just tap and click, and it's fine. But then, I am more of a fan of action games. I would like to see something like that on mobile that I can take with me. That's like fun to play action-wise. But that's a genre that's more built for controllers. And for the few games I've experimented where they're mobile and they have like the buttons on there, I still find it frustrating to have to constantly check where my thumb is to press the buttons to look there and not be able to just focus on the action and press things. I don't know if like younger kids don't have that issue, if because their muscle memory is built that way from there, or they just don't care. And just the newer generation of players just is used to like, no, this is just part of it. You look for where the buttons are or whatnot. I do like the innovation. I'm sorry. I do like the innovation where you can just put your thumb down on the left side to get the analog stick, or I guess right side because you can do ambidextrous since the screens are symmetrical for the most part. And it just you touch and wherever it is becomes like the center point of the digital joystick, and then you just slide the direction. I do think that's cool. That's a great innovation that they added there. And some of this has been solved with modern software. So it was a huge story the last couple of years when Apple finally added official driver support for Bluetooth connection for Xbox and PlayStation controllers. And that's ongoing to this day. So now you can just use traditional controllers that you probably already have in your house if you're already gaming on consoles. I don't know if you could do the Switch Switch Pro controllers or that. But there's also now a burgeoning third-party market of controllers for mobile. Some of them are built more like the classic ones with just clips to clip into your phone. And then there's the more like Switch Joy-Con style ones that have been coming out that clip on to the sides of the phone, and you hold your phone in landscape sideways view, and you can just play your games that way. The most popular one we've been hearing about right now is the Backbone controller.
Yeah, I kind of been thinking about getting those. The only thing that's holding me back is like all these rumors that Apple is gonna go like portless on their iPhones. I'm worried I like buy a backbone controller, and the next phone I buy is not gonna have like the lightning port, and then it's just gonna be useless. But I guess that's like the gamble you play when you're in the Apple ecosystem, is they could at any moment make a change just gonna break backwards compatibility with all the accessories you know and love.
Largely, it's a gamble you play with any electronics technology. So, yeah, but I did want to bring up because you mentioned like the older device that you had. So the first iPhone I had was an iPhone 5, which I really liked that rectangular design, and I was super excited when the iPhone 12 went back to that rectangular design. Um, but I try to upgrade every 4 years. All right, that's my cycle there
Yeah.
because you can get so much out of the phone. You really don't need to upgrade too often, especially nowadays. The phones are much more stable and last a long time. Quality. So I think next year is when I'm planning to go for a new phone, um, or maybe it was technically this year. I forget. But yeah, so that's an upgrade process, the mobile stuff, and some of that plays into like forwards and backwards compatibility. Now with Android, I think it's been much more like Windows. A lot of compatibility um, is there. I don't think there's much that's broken over time. But we not being in the Android ecosystem, we don't really know that information off the top of our heads. But with Apple, we have firsthand experience knowing, and I've heard from about several different games that I've paid attention to and wanted to play, where the compatibility breaks over time, and Apple doesn't care. If developers want to go back in and patch their game, they can, but it could break with every single like iOS patch as well. That's something where it's also a lot more demanding for developers to keep up with those games. Free to play games of service style games that are on the mobile phone are usually much more frequently kept up to date, but those standalone purchase games on mobile kind of just get left behind because they don't generate constant revenue. Um,
Yeah, I was one day I was bored and I was looking through like all my past purchases on my on iTunes, like
mhm.
the App Store. And it goes back to when I had like an iPod Touch in high school, which at this point is like 15 years ago.
Oh yeah,
So I'm scrolling down and I'm looking at all these apps, and uh a lot of them, the very old ones, you just can't download because they're not been updated. But fun fact, can you guess what the first app I ever downloaded was? I'm very embarrassed about it.
was it Facebook?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Accor-
Good, you guessed it.
Thank you. According to mine, it was Twitter. It was the first one
Oh,
if the
well,
one
I guess that's not much. That's not much better, but
the first three apps I downloaded according to this was Twitter, GameFly, and Netflix. So that's what I've had
yeah.
since downloading for iPhone. But yeah, so yeah, that is an issue there. It's unfortunate. I think that issue might get solved over time. Apple's been a little weird. They're back and forth about their gaming. They're kind of like Nintendo in the way they're doing their own thing. Gaming is a part of their monetization, and they continue with all of the press conferences that they do when they announce new phones. They usually have one or two developers come on, show off a few showcase games, talk about what is coming to Apple Arcade, um, how their system is becoming more and more powerful or friendly to game development, etc. And like gaming on phones has become much more impressive overall. Isn't it amazing to see like how good mobile games can look now?
Yeah, I mean, you people love to hate it, but Genshin Impact is like really impressive, and it's a mobile game. I mean, that's like a triple A mobile game.
Yeah, and I played Genshin Impact on PC because I didn't want to play it on the phone. I didn't want to play with touch control, like syncing up my controller to it. Even though I do have an iPad as well, so I could have probably played it on that. But I have the third generation iPad Pro. I guess that be yeah, because I got the first one with the 120 hertz refresh. So yeah, I didn't play it on there, but it was funny because I heard reports, and we were talking about this when we were first looking at Genshin because it was kind of up our alley as being an RPG, a JRPG. Was uh the PlayStation 4 performance, even on the Pro, was bad, and it played way better on phones in terms of stability wise for performance and frame rate. Um, but there was also weird like cross save things. Like I pretty much Sony, you could only move your save like one way, and if you did it, you're like locked forever to that, and your account could never move. So I just stuck with PC and said to heck with all that wildness. But yeah, that is
Yeah,
basically a
that's Sony.
yeah.
Sony is not very consumer friendly.
But I think Genshin Impact, and I wanted to highlight that, is like a perfect example of what is great about mobile games and also what's terrible. So it's great to see these big AAA style games coming to these, but the mobile market has had a huge problem in terms of perpetuating exploitative microtransactions and really just kind of driving down the quality of actual game design in terms of like progression and skill based stuff. I'm not saying every game has to be skill based. So I know some people get like that. I'm not trying to sound like an elitist in terms of that. There's plenty of low key puzzle games and things like that that are out there that are super interesting and play well on the phone, and they're great. It's just really depressing to see the marketplace be that games can't really thrive on mobile without being free to play and just trying to take advantage of microtransactions. There are some outstanding circumstances. I'm not saying everyone needs to be spending tons of money. And I would like to see games. There's also a weird value proposition. Like, it's funny. People scoff at a game being $15 on a mobile phone, even if it was actually produced like what it would be, like a digital game on or digital only release on, say, one of the home consoles. The World Ends with You, their the updated version for mobile came out at like 15, and apparently I'm assuming it didn't do well. But then they also released some of the older Final Fantasy at a high price. That's two different arguments there.
Yeah,
But
well, they're having the Pixel remasters are coming to mobile
are they?
for the
Or I thought
first
they were
six
just
Final Fantasies.
that was just PC for
Mobile
now.
and PC. Nope,
Right,
they're
mobile and
both.
PC. Sorry, mobile and PC. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. And they actually have a lot of old Final Fantasy. Like they have Final Fantasy Tactics available on iPad and iPhone, but you can't get it on Switch, and you can't get Chrono Trigger on Switch, but you can get it. Like there's a lot of stuff on mobile that from Square that you can't get on a platform where you might actually want to play it versus mobile. um, like a lot of those games, like I don't necessarily want to sit down and play like a big intensive game like that may or may not have been designed to play on a mobile screen or a touch screen.
I'm not even thinking
And
about that so much. So for me, it's more like I want to feel like I have a compelling experience to go back to, and I want all sizes. I want those smaller games, and I'd like some of the big games because the bigger games I can take with me, and I can carve out the little bit of time here and there to be able to play it. So that's where it'd be nice to have it with me, and some of that's very selfish, in terms of trying to find time to fit in all these games. But also, it's even for the smaller games, it's just really insulting. There's nothing wrong, I think, with games as service. I like to see games getting updated over time. It's just the side effects of it being designed that way that get really disheartening, where it's all these like premium currencies and they're charging you for that. Eventually, the game design's built in such a way to incentivize spending money rather than playing the game and enjoying your time with it. People can obviously ignore that. The stats bear out that the majority of people don't do that. But when that's where the money comes from, developers and publishers, more so the publishers, but indie developers, of course, aren't encouraged or, incentivized to design games not that way, to not just make the game as basic as possible and encourage people to just spend money instead, because that's what people do, whether that's throwing a couple bucks there or the streamers who are going to throw hundreds at a thing just to do content of opening random packs.
have you played any free to play games that you actually enjoyed?
Yeah, I've played a number of free to play games I enjoy, and I started to try and correct my own habit because I love it when a game is free to play with ads. and then you can buy a thing, a one-time purchase that's like, get rid of the ads. Perfect. One-stop thing. The game is self-contained. The only difference was if you didn't, we were ad supported, and if you do pay us the one lump sum, then you get the game without ads and maybe an extra feature or two. Love that. I'm guessing that hasn't that didn't bear out as much because now it's loot boxes and premium currencies. That's where it bared out, and some of them even still have ads after you do that. It's but like I
Like, have
have
you played any gotcha games that you thought were fun?
yeah, I'm getting to that. So I'm looking at my phone now.
Oh, okay.
I have like a basic solitaire app. I have Sudoku 2 Pro. I think I paid for both of those just recently. I upgraded from the free to play version. I've got the Heads Up game for parties and stuff like that. That I think that was the game that Ellen DeGeneres was pushing all those years ago, and it is a lot of fun. So I like having that. And I've bought a few packs on there for the different types of categories and things like that. Tetris. I got the new Tetris. I think it's the one after EA. I forget who. No. I think I bought that. And then for like gotcha style games. I guess the closest one I played, I mean, like I said, I played Genshin Impact, but I played that on PC, but it's technically the same game on both. So I did do that, but I didn't spend, actually, I don't remember if I spent any money on that. I think I might have spent, maybe I might have spent $10. That's kind of like my thing. And that started with Final Fantasy, Dissidia, Final Fantasy, Opera Omnium, because I'm a big fan of the Dissidia games on console, starting with PSP, and Cydia NT on consoles and PC. And so I was like, oh, let's try this. Oh, it's a turn-based. And they translated the kind of break system to the turn-based style. And I was curious how that was going to work. It's free to play. Why not give it a shot? Turned out it was the kind of gotcha style. But it wasn't, it's gotcha style in terms of like getting equipment and accessories, but not characters. For characters, you earn it through doing some quests, but you want to spec out your characters and level them up in order to be able to be strong enough to complete those quests to earn the character. I think maybe you could have bought the character as well if you wanted to spend currency, but you could earn it through play. So there's that. And there is a pretty decent clip of like the premium currency earned in game for doing it, but it did slowly ramp up. But they did like story chapters. It wasn't translated, or I should say, it wasn't dubbed in English, but it was because there is some Japanese voice hacking in there, and it's mostly text boxes. I did enjoy the story chapters, and I think they launched with 5 story chapters because it had been out in Japan first. Then it came to America. So I played through the 5 story chapters. It seemed like it was actually building a story, so that was fun. Battle system actually translated well, and I've said before, I'm not a very big turn-based RPG fan, but I liked how it was, and it being mobile and touchscreen, that felt appropriate. It was all fine. And then I spent $10 just to support the game, and then I waited till they released the next 5 chapters. They only did release one at a time after that. But I waited till I got all 5, and there were 10 chapters then, and I spent another $10 because I kept playing it. And then at some point I realized, oh, it's the same loop. They're putting out a new character. I'm getting all the gear. I'm trying to level them up so they're all at the same level with this, and then I'm trying to overgrind all of the gear and stuff to keep up to do the higher missions. And I realized that's not fun. That's not what I'm here for. I'm done, and I uninstalled it. Trying to think if there was another one. I've tried. I think I was looking at my list here. I did play another. I've tried looking at a bunch. I've ended up trying a bunch of gotcha games just to see if the gameplay was fun. But
So you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, though. You must have been into the Kingdom Hearts mobile game.
so I did download it to try it once since it was free to play. The Kingdom Hearts Union games. I hate them. They're bad. They're not good.
Yeah, I know. I was teasing.
Yeah, I know where you were going with that. I'm just letting our audience, so I'm being frank about it. Is that that was not what I wanted. I don't want a turn-based Kingdom Hearts. And when I found out it was gotcha, it's really disappointing. And I was just going to bring up quickly, like the Kingdom Hearts game, I just watched the cutscenes on YouTube, and we've talked about this before with Nier, and there's Nier Automata, Nier Replicant now, and then they've just put out Nier Reincarnation on the phones, and it's disappointing. I'm like, great, I can't wait to see the cutscenes on YouTube to get the lore, because that game's gonna be not fun. And You played it, Ed.
Did you
So
try it?
I
Did you
didn't try
try
it.
it?
I don't need to try it. Ed, tell us what you thought
I
about
don't
it.
like it very much.
Tell us how it
It doesn't
plays.
have much. It doesn't seem to have much gameplay to it. It's like you walk in a 3D environment to the next battle, which why do I have to watch my character walk when I'm not actually doing anything? It's just a long level select screen. And then the battles, you just like click through some dialogue and move, and then you have a battle. And the battle is you're just auto attacking and waiting for your moves to fill up, and then doing the special moves when their meters fill up. And it you can actually put the walking between the levels on auto, so your character will walk automatically, and you can put the battles on auto too. So like you don't even have to play the game. Like, and the story seems like kind of interesting, but the game there, like, it's barely a game.
Yeah.
And I have played gotcha games where I kind of thought the gameplay was fun. Like I played Fire Emblem Heroes, at least some of that, and the gameplay for me was, it's Fire Emblem. It's not quite as complex as the mainline games, but the core is there. And you get to choose characters, level them up. Like there's all the numbers are there. Yeah, you know me, I'm big on seeing those numbers go up,
Hmm.
and you can get that from that. um and then I play a little bit of it's called Shin Megami Tensei. I just played this a little bit recently, DX2, and that's the SMT game for mobile. And that one was okay. I mean, I haven't played much of it, but I could at least tell that like the battle system was, it was the same as those games. Like it was the core of it was there. Um it's just the near reincarnation, it wasn't a near game. It was just like I feel like it's supposed to be an action RPG, and there was no game there for me, which
And
was boring.
yeah, it sounds like you said like exploration doesn't really exist, let alone provide any sort of satisfaction.
The graphics are pretty nice though, but and the music is good.
Yeah.
The music is good, but and there's voice acting, so it's like high production values, but there's not much of a game there. Maybe I need to give it another try and just see if there's more to it, but I don't think there is.
You could do that. It's only fair, but it sounds like it's not going to change. And Yoko Taro said in the interview, even if he was joking, I'm pretty sure he was being. It was a half truth. Is like they asked him why is this was it chosen to be a mobile game? And Yoko Taro replied, "So Square Enix could make money through gotcha games." God bless the man.
I don't I don't think he's kidding.
I don't think he's kidding either, but it can come off as a joke, which is probably why he can get away with it. But either way, it's true. Like that's the problem. These games make money, and it really sucks because then I'm really torn because I feel like I do sound elitist when I bring that up. It's like these games aren't really designed to be like games you play. These are and I think James Stephanie Sterling uh, has coined this phrase as like fee to pay or fee to play or something like or free to pay, something like that. I'm getting the quote extremely wrong, um, but that's kind of how these games are designed. They're designed with the transaction in mind first, and how do we give people just enough interaction to get them invested to then want to see more. And I'm not saying every game needs to be hard to play or super skillful. You can have difficulty settings, you can have assistive settings, and things like that. Um, it's just it leads to these situations. Now, I thought, and I went trying to look for information, but I had a hard time finding it. Is do the mobile games with their gotcha elements that make a ton of money? Does that money end up going back into funding bigger projects? And probably loosely, yes, is what is the way it would work out in reality. Is that yes, if a company has more money, then they're willing to try it, then they're willing to take maybe or more likely to take a risk here or there on something else. But it doesn't. I didn't see any articles specifically like, hey, because this game did well, we ended up being able to fund a AAA thing, or hey, they let us take a risk on this just because the mobile game covered the cost. That doesn't seem to be the way businesses work. It seems to be very individual product focused. Like, hey, Dissidia Opera Omnium, we'll just stick with that as example, made a lot of money. Okay, well, how much does it cost to develop like a new chapter? Well, we made like 10 million, but it only cost like about 10,000 for us to make the next the next chapter. Okay, well, then take 10,000 more. For every 10 million we make, we take 10,000 out of that to reinvest in the game. And that's what they do. They don't go, oh, this game makes millions. We'll take the 10 million, we'll put 10,000 back into Dissidia Opera Omnium, and then we'll take 5 million from that to be able to fund the next console Dissidia. That doesn't seem to be how it like translates into with these for any of those games. I don't think, like, even Call of Duty, there's the online, I think there's Call of Duty Mobile that's like a first person shooter and stuff. Like, I don't think any of that feeds into like making the console games better. Not that consoles really need more budget; they get unlimited budget anyways, because Activision has essentially become just a Call of Duty studio.
I don't know if it directly goes, like, if they're saying they're taking the profits to make AAA games, but I could certainly see where, if you're a shareholder in, you mentioned Dissidia, if you're a shareholder in Square Enix and you see that maybe a couple of these AAA games didn't perform as expected, but they're still making tons of money on Final Fantasy 14 and all their mobile games, like, I could see where, like, okay, keep taking risks on the AAA games, and hopefully those, like, I think it might take the pressure off. I don't know if it's like directly saying that, directly funding them, but it certainly gives the company some leeway to be a little more risky in that aspect. I get what you're saying. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go and take all those profits and do something that we would think is worthwhile. They're different, probably different business divisions, but
Maybe.
um, it,
Yeah.
it bolsters the bottom line for the company as a whole, which I think is worth something.
Right. It does, and that's the thing where they don't. From what I can tell, it doesn't seem to be that those mobile things give them the room, doesn't encourage them to take the risks on the console games to let them not be profitable or let alone be just break even. They don't seem to be turning around and go, okay, we got mobile games to prop up so we can do some AAA things and take some risks and maybe make a hit here or there. It just doesn't seem to be the way it works, and that's the way it should work, or at least. And I realize I'm being idealistic. I honestly don't care about people who go, well, that's not how business works. I'm like, I don't care how business works. I care about how business should work, because the way it does work now has been leading to this situation now in our world where we see how people are harassed, underpaid, companies trying to take away undo unionization because they want to keep treating their employees bad. No sympathy for the upper management and the way current capitalism functions at its worst, which is the reality. All right, I shouldn't say it's the worst. It could be worse, but it's pretty bad, and it's obvious
That's never
why.
a good way. It could always be, anything could always be worse,
Sure.
but why can't we make it better? Yeah,
Yeah,
I hate that argument. Well, it could always be worse. It could be,
yeah,
you know, starving, sitting in a pile of your own filth.
yeah, and still working 40 hours a week. And some people kind of
80,
are.
80 hours a week.
Yeah, 80 hours a week. Yeah, some people kind of are, and that's the thing. Like, the way the world is, there's a good number of people who are okay, and there are businesses that aren't like that. But we see the news come out more and more how exploitative the corporations are, and we know how we got there. Like, it's not a secret, and it's just a matter of them trying to hoard money. That's all. It really is. It's unchecked greed. I'm getting a little preachy on this. I'm so sorry, but that it is part of what's going on here, because it is interesting that mobile games are like that. We've had this race to the bottom with the value proposition, which has affected how people. It will affect the industry going forward and the art of the games, and that the indie space obviously thrives more. There are companies and there are indies who will do exactly what I've been saying. They will strike it big with a really good mobile game that might have some microtransactions in it, and they make a lot of money, and then they can go on and they can make some dream games, and they make less exploitive stuff for people to play. But then there's the bigger stuff, the stuff that has tons of marketing dollars and stuff. But you don't see on mobile that much. And still, the reliance on microtransactions is very disheartening to see. It would be much better if these things were full products that got expansions over time, that didn't require people to be nickel and dimed or to be design the games around enticing people to play a game, to pay for it, not because they're having fun, but because they can't have fun unless they pay for it, or they have less fun without it. It's just very sad. But talking about like the positives there, like, smartphone gaming has gotten stronger over time. They're making higher quality games for it. The cloud access there, getting mixture of controller support. Oh, we were talking about the controllers before, and I wanted to mention how I thought about buying a controller. I have like the PlayStation controller and Xbox controllers. I could easily Bluetooth if I really wanted to, but I would really love to see a clamshell style design case that I could keep my phone in with, that folds open, kind of like a DS or Game Boy Advance SP is more what I'm going for, not necessarily in terms of it being like square, but like that form factor where your controls are on the bottom, the screen's on the top, which would be your phone, and you can close up the clamshell case and you can open it up and take it with you. That'd just be the most convenient, ergonomic way for me to like put it in my pocket, take that with me all the time, and be able to use my phone. So I'd like to see that. I realize it's kind of an engineering challenge to develop those, and even the backbone's like $100, which can be a little steep for some people. Or that that's $100 is not the cheapest. It's not the easiest ask. So that's understandable.
Well, the backbone's a little bit more than just the controller. It comes with a bunch of software where you can like take captures and share. There's like a social system built in where other people have backbone. You can like see what they're playing and you can invite them to play. And it also integrates pretty well with now it integrates with xCloud, even in the web, and it like you're it's not just a piece of hardware you're paying for when you get the backbone. So um depending on how you value those features, there's a little bit more than just a controller.
Well, while true, it does include the software, and the software has been impressive. Let's not forget, like, the reason you're buying that is because you want physical controls, and if those controls didn't feel good, the software would not be good enough to convince you to use terrible controls. So, to their credit as well, they designed good feeling buttons. I haven't had a chance to put my hands on one. It's like I said, it's not necessarily a design I'm looking for, and mobile gaming in general is not something I do very seriously. I do keep an eye on it because I'm always looking for excuses to play good games, but most of the games that are like mobile exclusive, I don't feel compelled to play. And then if they come to PC and they're good enough, then I'll play them on PC or console. So that's how that's been. It has been cool to see like the haptic technology that they've been working on. We were talking a little bit about it. Is having haptic feedback on like the iPhones has been pretty neat. And there's the ongoing discussion or ongoing development of trying to create like dynamic controls that would simulate physical touch. Haptic has some of it, but with screens still being smooth, until you can actually have something that will allow your thumb or fingers to feel the difference between two surfaces on the same, or two areas of a screen based on surfaces, that's not quite there. They want like the dynamic, like sci-fi style. The screen actually molds. It's a material that dynamically shape shifts. We're not quite there yet. I haven't even ever seen I haven't seen too many demos recently about that, and it's kind of faded away in the news. Like I'm not even seeing any like CES news about such tech.
The other problem you have with that is like if your controls are on screen, you're blocking part of the action with your thumbs.
Right.
So that to me is a big downside of using on-screen controls, is your hands get in the way of seeing what's going on.
Yeah. And like we said before, like touchscreens are not bad interfaces. They're just really good for specific types of games and specific types of gameplay or functions, such as like navigating a menu and things like that. Speaking of a game that was going to be touchscreen, where its interface, you can kind of see the old school design style, design philosophy that bled over into its port. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That was originally going to be on the Nintendo Wii U. And then when it got delayed enough that it was close enough to the Switch launch, that they're like, well, we should launch this simultaneously on both platforms. They adjusted it so it didn't need the touch controls anymore to work, but they'd already designed their inventory menu to be very touch focused. And so on Switch, you didn't use it at all. You just use it with buttons. And so it wasn't as intuitive with buttons as it could have been, because you could see that it had a design philosophy built around using the second screen for like switching items, picking up food, etc., and so on. So it's you have to design a game around having touch and making that a critical element. Otherwise, it's very obvious when a game is not designed around touch specifically. And you see these hybrids, and that's what you see, those on-screen buttons for action games and stuff like that that are mobile focused. And it's just the muscle memory. It doesn't feel right to, you constantly have to look at that, and you, like you said, cuts off parts of the screen that you want to see. Although they're pretty good at like keeping the action at specific points. So there are games that are better designed than others for touch interface, and it's just, yeah, you see people cutting corners all the time to make things work, and people are willing to play them. I just, that's the thing. I don't know what to say about what people are willing to play versus quality, but I guess that doesn't excuse developers from making something that's actually good and not just playing to the lowest common denominator, because that's constantly the struggle.
I mean, I gotta say, I know you're very idealistic with things, but at some point, I think with music, with movies, with TV, it, there's gonna be a lot of stuff out there that's not good. I don't think everything can be for you, and I it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you that a lot of these mobile games are necessarily not fun for me or you to play, because at least right now I think the gaming market is big enough that I can still find the kind of games that I like to play pretty much on almost every platform. um, but I can see where you're coming at, like, if it really becomes, if the disparity in profits that you can make from like a cheap mobile game versus a big AAA game, um it's so wide, then they might not view it as worth their investment. I mean, that's kind of what Konami has decided right now. They don't want to invest in AAA games. They
Mhm.
have their mobile games, they have their other business interests, and they have the occasional like indie game or re-release, but they're not doing any more AAA games. So you wonder, maybe more publishers would feel the same way, that why are we spending our time and money on games that are really expensive to make, that have to have huge sales to meet our profit expectations. um, so that is a future that is concerning, but I guess hopefully I'm trying to be optimistic that there's, as long as there's a market for AAA games, some people like us, we're not gonna want to play gotcha games and put any money into them.
Mhm.
So if they want to get our money that we would spend on games, they have to kind of make the games that we would want to play. So, but maybe we're a dying breed.
Yeah, and it's a balance between, people can only buy what exists, so what gets made, but people still have the choice to not buy the thing that exists. And it's a battle between that, like FOMO and stuff, and fortunately a lot of times FOMO wins out. Um but I was going to say, one of the things we can always look for that is realistic and is a true fact, there's always going to be creative people that are going to want to take risks and going to want to try to do something creative, and we just got to keep hoping that luck will pan out eventually for some, for at least one, but definitely some, to enough where they get enough money and resources from whatever, that they can actually make a big splash, make some good stuff, and maybe shape the industry in a better direction over time. But for right now, we don't really reward creativity monetarily as much as we reward derivation. The like gotcha games are pretty much all the same. It's They might have slightly different gameplay, but the point is to get you to spend money on the microtransactions. And it's one way or another, and you see all these different things. There was talk before on like consoles with genres and things like that, but this isn't even so much a genre debate as it is um a what would you call it? ugh, I want to say financial model. That's not the phrasing I'm looking for. Um, a way of it's a way of business. It's different. It's not.
Monetization.
No, no, that's part of it. It's in there, but that's not the phrase I'm looking for. Because like I was saying, it's not a battle of like genres. Like we're not worried about first person too many first person shooters being on like phones. It's a business model. It's not a battle of genres. It's a battle of business models. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, my brain. Um, but speaking of, like, there are positives. So we got to hope that someday, there through some luck, we'll get people who actually care to get the resources they need to do it. And we need people in power who do it as well as consumers who aren't as bad about incentivizing the wrong things. Um, but we were talking about good stuff that mobile does, and this is kind of tricky. We talked a little bit about this on PC on the last episode with PC gaming, but streaming. Like we have these smartphones, they're with us all the time. You wanted to get to this as well. Was how like XCloud is coming there. I don't know if Apple has any sort of other game streaming features there, but like
I
you can
don't
also
think
do
that
like
they don't.
Google Stadia, whatever. Um, and Netflix is going to get into gaming.
Stadia.
Stadia. We don't know how Netflix is going to handle their gaming, if they're going to do a strictly streaming solution, or if they're also just going to publish games and do downloading. So,
Netflix may be like the pushing point for Apple to allow streaming gaming. Because if Netflix says, we're going to put game streaming in our main app, like what is Apple going to do? Say no, you can't put you can't put Netflix on a iPhone. Like people would go crazy if they couldn't get they couldn't get Netflix on their Apple devices just because
mhm.
Netflix could really force their hand. I think they have a lot of power in that negotiation because Netflix is hugely popular, more so than Game Pass or Stadia by like many orders of magnitude.
Yeah. And streaming itself, as we mentioned many times before, it's a great concept. We're not quite there in the world for the technology to work as like intended, even within a realistic ideal. You need a good enough connection, and we were talking about before, like you can't uh, stream. Was it PlayStation? You can't do it over data. You can only do it over Wi-Fi.
Yeah, PS4 remote play you can't do over cellular data, only Wi-Fi. Or place I guess it's not just PS4, it's both PlayStation remote play you can't do over
Yeah.
cellular data.
So that's the thing. We need the wireless infrastructure to be updated. 5G, as it rolls out, will hopefully alleviate that since it can go much faster. And they'll figure out some of the logistic issues with the infrastructure for 5G. So that way it can be in more places and more people can have access to it. Like that's just a matter of time for there. Data caps need to go away. Hopefully, eventually, data caps will go away. It seems like that's shifting ever so slightly, and maybe with the options of like 5G and stuff like that, with higher possible speeds on mobile, they'll be able to shift from a data model to a speed model, kind of like home internet is in uh, some parts of the country. Because obviously, there's home internet with data caps. Comcast is notoriously awful with that, and it's really depressing that is how they monetize. But once again, it's because of greed, not because of any actual practical purpose for it. So, um, I think streaming is going to be really cool, and I really like being. And that's the thing, we like gaming on the go. I know I'm home most of the time, in the pandemics obviously kept a lot of us at home. Things are opening up, but who? Ed, you what portable systems did you own? I've had Game Boy, I've had DS, I've had PSP, etc. Which ones have you owned again?
I had Game Boy Advance and DS, 3DS. I had a PSP and PS Vita at some point. I don't have those anymore. Um, and I had the Switch. So
And
I
Switch, yeah,
like portables. I like portables.
yeah,
These days, I mostly play on the big screen, and it's because I'm at home,
yeah.
and it's also because a lot of the games I've wanted to play are only on PS4 or
Mm,
Xbox, so I don't have a choice. But that's kind of why I'm thinking I might want to, get a controller for my, I want to give that a shot, try XCloud or Remote Play,
yeah.
and see how well they work for me because for you don't have to be on the same network as your device, your console. You can play them over
Mm.
the broader internet. So I'd like to see how they work. I'm curious to see, but um, I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah. But think about like there's other scenarios too. Like we're home right now, but when things were more normal, like especially when we were younger, and I'm gonna, I don't know how listeners are gonna judge us in this, but I really don't care because we've all been in this. Everyone's got cell phones. They distract themselves with social media or browsing things just because you're trying to kill time. And instead of us doing that, we want a game. Like that's it. And the gaming's a little bit more productive in terms of like doing something. Just be like someone brings a book with them in their handbag. Like nobody's gonna bat an eye if someone busts out a book on there. No one bats an eye now. Someone's on their phone while sitting on public transit or at a restaurant. But how cool would it be if you didn't have to bring an extra device to like while you're sitting at a restaurant ordering some food and you're just waiting for it to and you're just gaming a little bit. You maybe got some friends with you, so you brought that. And that's something that does happen in like Japan. Like that's why portable gaming's so huge there. They go out, they sit at places and they play games. Like that's how they do their socializing instead of being at home, and that's great. It's part of socializing, not the only thing they. But I like that here, and I
So
like
you want to be in a Switch commercial where you're like on a rooftop bar with your
yes.
friends and you gather around the Switch playing Mario Golf.
Yes. I want life to be more like those Switch commercials where it's like, yeah, we're going to bring the thing with us. That's why the Steam Deck is so exciting because it's the ultimate LAN thing. Like, it's great to be able to have the convenience of being at home, going online, jumping on Discord, talking to your friends and gaming there. It's another thing to have a second screen and also being able to just pick up a small device or have very convenient and go over to a friend's house and be able to play those games right there where everyone's got their own screen and everyone's still able to have that experience. But now you're in the room, you don't have to load up Discord. You're just chilling and hanging out. You pause, you take a break. You're there that physical social aspect is always great, and that's part of where that comes from. Not just solo but also multiplayer. And having a device, especially for like phones that you always have to have on your person, it's great to have those. It'd be wonderful to have more worthwhile experience on those. And that's what I'm really arguing for is more worthwhile experiences that I'm not going to have. What's the catch? Oh, eventually it's going to be telling me this or something dumb like and I have an issue with service games. I think there's a certain amount of content you should do. Like I don't mind a game coming out as a service, but I guess this is where as a consumer, I can take some responsibility for going, "Oh, it's a games as service? All right, I'll wait 2 years and then I'll check it out." The game might die, but that's not my fault. If the game dies, it's not my fault. But it also is a problem in the industry where if a service game comes out, it has too little content, but enough people put money into it to keep it alive long enough for to get to an acceptable point that there's a problem there too. And that's weird. And I can't help but bring up like there's the two sides of this argument. There's wonderful things about this and the idea of these, but there's a certain way that's good, and we don't want to perpetuate bad business models that just are about exploiting the consumer. And I think Ed, you were kind of being half sarcastic when we were texting about it, but it's like, isn't every business model exploitative? And I was going to say, what would not feel exploitative to you for monetization? We're getting into this, but there, like I said before, when we did some of the monetization episodes, there's going to be a lot of overlap, especially with mobile. So like, what's like microtransactions you don't feel are exploitative?
Um, I guess like a traditional expansion is not necessarily exploitative. Like
Mm,
I mentioned it earlier this year. I liked the Fire Emblem Three Houses expansion. I
mhm.
got some value out of that. I enjoyed that. Um, I think cosmetics and loot boxes and all that are not good. Because think about it, like you used to be able to just unlock cosmetics and all these cheats and stuff. They were built into the game. You just
Yeah.
unlocked them by playing the game, and now you got to pay for them. Like these are things you used to get for free. Um, Loot boxes are just like there's no way those can be good for consumers. Not there's I can't imagine a way where that's uh you know not favoring the publisher. Um,
Yeah.
I
Um,
guess, and I'm okay paying for just a single game. And I guess I'm starting to see the value of a subscription. But that just depends on what they keep on it and if how much they increase the price. Like I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years Game Pass is maybe $18 a month, and then maybe $20 a month. I could see it going up just like Netflix and Disney Plus went up $1, and everything keeps going up in price. But um,
Yeah.
it's
It
kind of like a case by like it's kind of a case by case basis. It depends on the game, how I feel, how much value I feel. Like some games I really want to get a long play time out of. Other games I'm okay with the shorter play time. It all depends on the genre in the game. It's really hard to set a single standard.
or maybe with the price.
Yeah.
The
Some games I'm happy to get for a lower price, and some I'm happy to pay up front the brand new on launch day.
Yeah, and the so, like, I can talk a little bit about Avengers because I feel like it did pretty well. It still feels like it doesn't have enough content, but it's gotten better, and I think it's it's part of the nature of the game, and I think it's just, they haven't quite put the content in there yet, or they're building it. It's a games as service. It's one of those things where I feel like if where the game is now would have been where it launched, like $60 would have felt great. But there is like a number of cosmetic options and things like that that are not in there. But I do. So here's what I like about what they're doing. The base game has the single player campaign, which is pretty good. It's kind of short, but it's good. And you get the 6 characters, and then you can play the multiplayer as like post game content. You could co-op back through the story for a good number of the chapters, is whatnot. And it's loot grindy. But you get gear and you level up your characters and you learn new skills, and like the gameplay's good. I think it's solid. It's not the best. It's not like Platinum Games good, but it's really close in my opinion. A few tweaks and it would be there. I think some of it has to do with the fact that it has to be online, so like it can't be as perfect and tight as it needs to be, but or as it could be because of that. But that's something someone with programming knowledge could really explain. But I know there's like latency you have to take into account for getting that for an action game like this, for a beat 'em up like this. Um, where their incentive is, they're in where their monetization comes in is there's the base game you buy, and then they've promised to support it, and they're going to release all the characters and the campaign expansions for free. But what happens is every character has a character card. The first 6 characters all have their character card included in the base game for free. And what it is basically it's like a season pass. You accomplish certain daily and weekly quests, gives you experience points, and as you go up, it unlocks them. There's a premium currency. I'm disgusted with it, but there's a premium currency. And you can pay to skip ahead just like a normal battle pass. But you can earn the credits, and obviously, if you're enjoying the game, you can go in, you can play, and you'll just naturally unlock a bunch of this stuff. And it's all cosmetic stuff. You'll earn some of the in-game currency, you'll earn some of the premium currency, and you'll earn additional costumes and cosmetics and other things like that. And that's pretty cool. Anything gameplay specific is completely earned in-game and is not reliant on any of the premium currency.
Can you miss out on these? Like, are these battle passes or cards that are like time limited?
No.
Because isn't it? I don't know much about Fortnite, but so I understand it. Like, they have these events where you can earn these new characters and stuff, but you only have a limited time to do it. Am I right on that?
No. The
Uh,
only limited time thing they have is that they do some limited time events for like extra XP. Because now there's like
oh,
prestige levels for characters, and you earn extra stat boosts, which is pretty neat. Uh, but that's like a huge unlimited thing. That's big post game content, and it's not XP. Eventually, kind of loses its value over time. Also, you can get rarer loot drops or specific types of loot drops. That's the only thing, but all that stuff's still in the game. You can earn it through other things. It's more like these events just make it easier to get some of the things you're looking for if you're playing it that way. Instead, what happens is when the new characters come out with their expansions and they have their character card, it's kind of like what you were alluding to, Ed, is that like back in the game, you just have these things that are unlocked. So when a character comes out, it basically has this is the default set of things you can unlock for this character. But for the new characters, since they're giving you their gameplay and expansion, their story expansion for free, and then you can play with them in the campaigns and whatever and multiplayer all you want, they will charge you what would be $10 worth of the premium currency to unlock a character's card so you can start earning off that. Now, I saw some interesting language, and I got to double check on this. I think there's some items on the pass you can earn without it being paid for. And like there's like items that like this is the standard battle pass stuff, and then there's premium stuff on the battle pass that you can't get unless you unlock the card. And for all the other characters, for the first 6, the cards are unlocked for free. You don't have to pay extra. They're just included with the base game. And each character, from what I understand, earns you $13 worth of currency. So technically, you beat the thing. If you clear the card, you have 1,300 of the premium currency, which is $13. Basically, how the price breaks down. And so, if you unlocked all of those, you will be left over with more than enough to buy. So far, the first 3 characters that have come out, their battle passes, get 1,300 from them, and then you have some spare change, which you can use the premium currency for unlocking other emotes if you want. And you can either fast track for unlocking stuff on the battle pass right away, or there's exclusive costumes you can only unlock through gameplay and accomplishing certain missions, or there's ones you can just buy using the premium currency. So right now they have enough wiggle room. I think the game's fun enough that you can definitely get most of what you want. The only thing that's limited time that really bothers me is that they just have a marketplace, a sub marketplace inside the game where they will rotate some of the exclusive stuff that you can only get when it randomly pops into the vendor's inventory, and it refreshes every couple days or every couple hours or something like that. It's super annoying because also it's not like a huge selection. It's only like 4 items. So you have to wait for like a week for 4 items to rotate, and then maybe, just maybe, this thing you can't even buy with money is now in this randomly generated inventory that you can buy with the in-game currency that you can earn. It's fairly scarce too, but you earn small amounts in very regular increments, but not like big lumps to actually be able to afford a bunch of things. It's really hard to bank a ton. So that's the thing. You might not even be able to earn enough to buy the thing in the time you need to, and then it goes away, and then it's just in the shuffle, and there's no other way to get it except for the random thing there. That's really frustrating. And I get like with their games of service, they want you to keep coming back. They want the engagement. That's also not fun. Just let me play the game I want to play and stop trying to make every game be the only game I play. Call of Duty is doing it through hard drive sizes. You know, they want their 200 gig game to be the only game that fits on your hard drive. At least that's the way it does. I like that internet conspiracy theory. I think that's funny. And it seems more and more practical the larger that game is. So,
Yeah, it is huge. I was worried about kind of the space on the Series X, but I downloaded a bunch of games, and I think the biggest game I've downloaded so far was Flight Simulator. But maybe the kind of games I like aren't that big, which is good. But they'll probably just keep getting bigger. So it's probably gonna, storage can be a problem. Um, but that's kind of beside the point. Just kind of tangent there.
yeah, well, it depends on what kind of games, because there are modern games that get huge, and then there's other games that are modern that aren't that big. Like, how much was Neo: The World Ends with You? Did you check how much that was to download? I know you bought that recently.
No, I bought it on disc.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It still installs your hard drive.
Probably. I don't remember. It probably
Okay.
wasn't more than 20 gigabytes though.
Right, exactly. So there's
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me look.
Yeah, take a look with that, because I'll state I was going to run off. So like, I'm surprised at how big some of the games are. Like Avengers is like, on the PC, that's where I play it, is like 80 gigabytes, and that's rounding up. There is a high resolution texture pack, which is like 4K textures for the game. That's an extra 40 gigabytes, is what Steam tells me. It's crazy. I bought Mass Effect Trilogy Legendary Edition on Steam. It's either 90 or 100 gigabytes for all 3 games on there, which is pretty wild. But then there's like Halo, and I get the Halo Master Chief Collection, which I also bought through Steam. Could get it on Game Pass, but I chose to buy it on Steam because it's $40 for all 6 games as the bundle price. So those older games, though, altogether, even with their newer textures and stuff, those 6 games, it comes in at like under 70 gigs for 6 games. That's pretty wild. And then I've got Tekken 7 on PC, and that one's getting up to like 70 gigabytes after all the characters as well with stuff. So And then there's some other fighting. Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 11 and Injustice 2, I think, were also pretty big. They're around 40 to 50 gigs, I think, a piece for them. And Injustice 2, I think, a bit more because they had a bunch of the accessory pieces that are in there. So that's a lot of extra texture work and stuff. And they also have a bunch of their cutscenes are pre-recorded, so they have raw video files, and those video files always take up a bunch. So that's some of the ones I'm talking about there, where it can range a lot. What did you find, Ed?
7.9 gigabytes is the size of New Year the World Ends With You. I mean, there's some indie games that are bigger than that.
Exactly.
Um,
Let me take a
but
look.
it's not exactly like a graphical stunner. And it doesn't really have many cutscenes either. All the story is like comic book style word bubbles. So, um, which I
Well,
like, but it's not like a super high production value game. So that's understandable for
right.
the size.
I'm sorry, we are getting a bit off topic, but I'm gonna mention a point there you phrased, which was you said it's not exactly a visually stunning game. Actually, it is visually stunning because its art style is great, but art style doesn't mean that it isn't the same as like trying to go for realistic with 8K like 4K textures and
Yeah.
stuff. So like people say, "Oh, that's
I
impressive."
do like, yeah, I like the art. So yeah, I guess I was not being using the right words. Maybe it's I say it's not like a high fidelity game,
All
but
right. And
um,
then Scarlet Nexus is another thing I wanted to bring up. It's like a more modern game with high style. It's not Yes, it's not the prettiest, but the art style's great and the character designs are amazing. It's somewhere between 15 and 20 gigabytes. So you can totally make AAA games these days with under 50 gigs taken up on your hard drive. It's just about what are you going for. Yes, if you're going for these super high resolution textures and you're trying to make super realistic graphics, then and uncompressed music and stuff like that. Yeah, the file size is going to inflate like crazy, but they don't have to be that way. You could go for more style over um, trying to go for realism, and you can have a much more impressive. And usually the visuals last longer. So, getting back on topic of mobile and what I was trying to say with the monetization, like there are games that are less exploitative, and I'd like to see less exploitative things on there. Now, granted, Avengers also had troubled launch. It's getting better. They fixed a lot of things. It's still buggy. It's not perfect, but every game's got its bugs now. There's a lot of multiplayer games, and as games get bigger, you can't help but have more issues with them because of just the nature of the sophisticated game design. So, I give sympathy there. We should hold to some standards. I would be saying like smaller games are fine. I would do want to. We're gonna do a full topic on this as part of like the game market, but I want to bring up that recent news story regarding the developer who um, says they're going out of business because of Steam's return policy. So I'm referencing the article from Eurogamer, and they say the Steam's return policy is the 2-hour time limit within 2 weeks. And I'm trying to find the name of the game and the developer. Emika Games, Emika. So Emika or Emika, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but that's how it is. Emika Games. And what game did they just release? I'm trying to find the title. Why is it not? Oh boy. Summer of 58. Psychological thriller. And it's a 90-minute experience. And I think that's fine. And mobile has given a bunch of space for games that have smaller design, puzzle style games. Like I mentioned that I'm very boring and I play like Sudoku um and solitaire. But the room was amazing. Like I've looked for other games that are as engaging as that. I've downloaded it on my phone. I kind of started up, but realized it would require way more attention. Is this game Unmemory that has to do with and I learned about this on another podcast with someone who's very mobile focused and always looking for fun games and stuff like that. Um, where you read it, it's like a text narrative adventure, but they play with a bunch of little things on there. So you're like, uh, it plays with the reality. I don't remember enough about it to give the context, but there's some really cool, interesting elements there. Uh, and then there's all sorts of other indie games that are smaller and that don't need to be giant AAA experiences, and mobile gives them room for that. And then there's other experiences where they, but we see all the service games and stuff. Or was Flappy Bird? Do you remember if Flappy Bird was free to play or was it charged or ad driven?
It was ad supported.
There's that. There's Angry Birds, which forget was that also free to play ad supported?
I think it was ad supported to start with, but I think now it has, microtransactions and
Yeah. There was
I don't know.
Plants
I
vs
haven't played in
Zombies.
a while.
Started out as mobile. And yeah, kind of, I guess we're looping back around to like where the ad supported thing was probably the least offensive. It could get bad, could get rough, but
Ads these days are pretty bad because a lot of the ads in mobile are like ads for other mobile games. And it ends up being that like to get rid of these ads you have to play like the ads, so you have to like click in and like interact with the ad to get rid of it, so you can't just like walk away. Like ads in mobile games are pretty bad these days. Like you actually have to play like a facsimile of the part of the gameplay to get the ad to go away, so you
sometimes,
can't even like just watch it. Yeah, some of
sometimes,
them are bad.
but there are also pretty much you just have to look in the corners and like after 5 seconds, there's usually an X that pops up, and sometimes those X's are very like transparent and it's made to blend in, so it's really hard to see, the deceptive stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then it's funny. Shoot, who one of the podcasts who was talking about exactly. I feel so, but they were talking about this exact situation, and it's just like, why do some of these ads have games in them that are fun, and when you get to the real game, it's nothing like that, and it's like because nobody cares. The risk is worth the reward because if they get you in and you play it and you're hooked, you're hooked. If you bounce off, who cares? It's free. Someone else can come get it. Maybe we at least got a little ad click or something like that. I'm paraphrasing that ad part. But yeah, that was the thing is they don't care. They'd rather just try and get you in, try it, and if you're hooked, you're hooked. If you're not, you're not. And there's no risk to them to doing that, to deceiving you. And that's another thing. Like marketing shouldn't be deceiving. That should totally not be allowed. There should be some sort of ad review service. Like this is not representative of the product you're showing. So someone should be checking that stuff out. Who knows? Maybe we should. Hey Ed, maybe we should try and hire a lawyer and see if we can find some lawsuits and sue a bunch of people for ads that aren't representing
Class action.
class action. Would it be class action or something else? I don't know. I've always wanted to catch a company on false advertising because I feel like it just makes some really quick, easy money and also like send a message. It's like, look, you don't get away with lying. That's not how this works. I'd feel good about.
I don't think that would be easy money.
Probably, well, I mean, if you had a good suit, but I would love. But that's the thing. I would feel good about suing someone over like, hey, you were lying. You don't get away with lying. Pay me big money. I will take a large sum from a corporation to catch them on lying. I don't feel bad about that.
No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah. So with mobile, I guess, yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff that has happened. It's perpetuated some really bad stuff, and those like the microtransaction stuff has bled into AAA because now they want to put loot boxes and that stuff in there. You see it in the sports games with like the FIFA All-Star Team or whatever, All-Star Mode or something. I don't think they've done it to Madden yet, but I think they've been trying to. But yeah, that kind of stuff is not good. It's nice to see mobile becoming more viable for real games, even though it's been the most roundabout. Like streaming is gonna. I'm sorry, I gotta correct myself because I said real gaming, and that's not I. That is something I also gotta self-correct myself on because we've had this like we kind of went into this attitude going like mobile gaming is not really mobile gaming. That's the thing, but that's not true. If you play games on mobile, they are real games. There's good games and there's bad games.
And some of them have a lot of depth and people really get into them.
Yes.
Like, how big is Pokemon Go? All the real life events they have, all the raids like that. Pokemon Go is definitely a real game.
It's a real game. Is it a good game or is it a bad game? It's somewhere in between, of course. It's got some decent ideas. And it's almost to say like, is it really a game? Is it really an experience? And I'd say this is one of those things where that Pokemon Go is less of a game. It's not so much a game as it is like a monetization driver because, games have rules. Games require some sort of critical thinking. And I think maybe that's it. Like in a game, how much critical does what a game is. And I don't want to touch on that right now too much, but I'm gonna say like, for it to be a real game, like, or for a game to be a game, has to involve some sort of critical thinking. Um, and how much critical thinking does Pokemon Go really do? Because you figure out where a Pokemon is, you go there, you gotta throw the ball. I think it's random, pretty much, is you throw the ball, and just the different types of balls, just like in the game, have different odds. I think you can throw candy. I'm not sure what all the gimmicks are for catching it. I just know it doesn't require battling.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like as much of a game as like travel is almost. You're almost more like sightseeing with Pokemon Go,
Yeah,
except you're not actually looking at the site. You're just looking down at a screen when you're there
yeah, it's more like a
and doing the AR thing.
yeah, it's like a subgenre thing. It'd be like a virtual amusement experience. Because like when you go to an amusement park, you're not really always playing games. You're going on rides. It's an experience, and you're still having fun, and that's fine. But it's not exactly a game. Like you wouldn't say going on a roller coaster is a game. So that's where I'm thinking like Pokemon Go is like a different type of thing. It's still valid for what it is. I don't know if I'd necessarily say it's a game because you can't really beat it. It's just a thing you play over and over again. But I guess you could say the same of Tetris. It's a puzzle thing, but you can reach an end point, kind of. You get a game over. You never really win. You just do better each time. You get a high score. You beat your high score. You compare it to leaderboards. You beat someone. You can create your own objectives, basically. And overall, it's just see how high you can score. So, um, yeah. Oh man, I'm looking forward to talking about all those different things and just exploring the ideas. But yeah, it's there's better and worse games. Mobile gaming is gaming. If someone plays a bunch of mobile games, I'm not going to call them like a casual or something like that. That's all about your attitude on how you look, how many games you look for, how often you want to play games, how driven you are to play games. And that's something we talked on the side when we were coming up for this topic here. Um, but yeah, I think mobile gaming's good. I want to see it just get better. I want it to become more and more of a respected platform. But the industry has to correct itself in that by stopping with their shenanigans and focusing more on the art of the craft. And there are plenty of indies that are doing that and getting out there. And it's just really hard to find it. Like curation, and that's a whole other thing we wanted to talk about. But curation isn't that really good on mobile. It's really hard to find. You really got to look by word of mouth and even some trying stuff. The free to play, having more free to play things and more ways to demo games, that is something that's come from mobile that's really nice. But the side effect of
Yeah,
that,
I mean, this is why all of these past few problems you mentioned are why I have enjoyed Apple Arcade. Like, it takes care of the problem of curation because most of the games on Apple Arcade are pretty good examples of what they're trying to do, if not very good. Um, they have a little bit of something. Some stuff is you have a little bit of every genre, and they're all free of microtransactions and ads. So like it's frustrating to see how good that is versus the rest of what's on mobile because it really shows you the potential for good games on mobile. um and there are a lot of paid premium games on mobile, and we've mentioned the Final Fantasy remasters, and there's a lot of classic games that, and I think there's like three different Professor Layton games. Like I think the Ace Attorney games. Like there's games that you just pay for on mobile. Like that's not like they don't exist. Um, but
right? But
those aren't the most profitable games.
also, the games you named didn't start on phones. They weren't built for mobile. They were built on console
Yeah,
platforms and then ported to mobile to try to appeal to those audiences and tap into that market. And
that's true.
what we didn't look up, it would have been cool because I didn't even think to look those up, was try and see what the sales numbers are like on mobile for those style of games. How much money's made and what's like the most profitable um, pay for mobile game. Actually, let me do a quick Google on that. I was going to end on a different question, but let me look that up real quick. What is the most profitable paid mobile game? No, I don't want highest grossing mobile game because that
Is the highest grossing mobile game, what is it, like Fate Grand Order or something, or maybe not that one? Now I'm looking
depends
at
on
the
the
list right
article.
now.
Clash Royale is the one I'm seeing is on this Screen Rant March 21, 2021 article of the 10 highest. Oh, wait, no, that might have started at the bottom. Sorry, it might not be Clash Royale. Number 10 was Clash Royale, $3+ billion.
Yeah, I see it.
Let me see. Number 3.
Honor of Kings, Tencent.
Oh,
No
boy.
surprise there.
Number 3 was Puzzle and Dragons, 7.8, over 7.8 billion. Monster Strike, 9.2+ billion, and then Arena of Valor, 9+5, or over $9.5 billion. And
Yeah.
an international adaptation of Honor of Kings. Okay, so Arena of Valor is Honor of Kings. It's just regional titling. Just to be clear for our readers who are, for our listeners, for our audience.
Man, this makes Fortnite look like small potatoes. Like Fortnite is popular, but it's not even top 25 of mobile games.
It doesn't.
But maybe this is just on mobile.
Right, that's the thing. Fortnite's on everything, so it can be making money from tons of places. And also, Epic, like while they enjoy the extra Fortnite money, Epic owning Unreal Engine and basically being one of the top like 3 engines, middleware engines for. I think it's considered middleware. I apologize if that's not the right term for that, but engines that gets licensed out to developers, so they constantly get cuts from all that stuff. So they have their money cut out for them with Epic. Yeah, I'd have to do some digging because everything's about highest grossing and not about, hey, this game that you have to pay it's a one purchase thing. How much money has it made? And I'm assuming because because I'm not finding articles that easy, they're not posting impressive numbers unless they're free to play with microtransactions. And that's very sad. That's very disappointing because of what it leads to. What I wanted to end on...
I doubt it.
What I wanted to end on was more about hardware stuff because we briefly touched on it. There's not really gaming phones. There's a really small market of higher-end smartphones that are built with some gamer style specs with like higher amounts of RAM, higher refresh rates, slightly better battery life, or even some custom software integration for controllers and game library management.
Asus makes a gaming phone,
right?
The Republic of Gamers phone.
ROG, yeah, ROG or ROG.
Yeah,
Asus ROG.
ROG.
Looking at the articles here. For what would be like gaming phones, like it's not the same as like with gaming PCs. The landscape of like quote unquote gaming phones doesn't really exist in a way that like it does when you think about like a gaming PC versus like a normal desktop PC or a laptop or things like that. The hardware, while there is some specialized thing, it's not necessarily a very big genre because a big category of the hardware, because a lot of the hardware is very standardized, and just in general they've been increasing it because it's incentivizes people to get the phones and have the lowest common denominator and make them available to as many people in the market. Now, I'm not sure if like the manufacturers of the phones get a cut like that, but I know like Google and Apple has their own enclosed platform. So for them, they constantly want to keep making sure that developers feel incentivized to put it there, other than just their market conditions, which, compared to Android, it's a much more closed market. It's a lot harder to spoof it or get like a crappy game or get viruses on there. There's some sort of curation that works out pretty well. But
iOS Apple users are often much more willing to spend money on apps and in apps than Android. Like there are more lucrative, customers. So.
Yeah, and I think some of that does have to do with the fact that since Apple products are higher end devices, or at least they're more expensive, it means that the audience that usually has Apple has extra money to burn. It has disposable income. And with Android, with the huge wide range, it appeals to people who don't have as much disposable income. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just stating facts. So not only having the option to sideload stuff and not have to pay, but also with just the fact that more people who own Android, uh, you can get them at lower price points, so people may not have as much money to spend on luxury things or on frivolous microtransactions and that. So I was going to ask you, Ed, is it something you'd want? Would you want like a more gaming focused hardware device? Because you've been interested in some stuff like the Playdate we talked about. The Steam Deck's kind of interesting. All these dedicated like handheld things. Do you feel like it'd be worthwhile to see a bigger category like how Sony did when they tried to make their PlayStation phone for a little bit, or no, the Xperia Play. That's what they made. Do you think you'd want to see that where like controls are kind of built in some way, like even like a clamshell design, or just or like even a Switch style like big phone that has really tailored to controls? Do you feel like you would be more incentivized for that, or do you kind of like where mobile phones are right now, where they're built first for like their multimedia purposes, and it's really cool how gaming is kind of been integrated into that?
I think I'd rather just have a really well built phone because you know, I on my phone. So the Apple devices are, at least iPhone, like they're pretty capable machines. They're very capable, in fact. And I kind of like the approach of having different options for different accessories. I don't want all the bulk of like a clamshell design or controller built into the phone when I might not be using that function all the time. Like I kind of like the option of just to take my phone and not have to take the controller with me. And if I want a controller, I can just take it with me. Um, what I would really like to see is more options for gaming on phones. I'd like to see, I like Apple Arcade, I like all the mobile games, but I'd like to see native game streaming apps like Stadia and Xbox. I'd like to see PlayStation Now to have a streaming option on iOS. And if Netflix is making games, I'd like to see that. More competition for better gaming experiences on mobile would be great. And I would like to see, and I well, we already have it, but I'm glad that we have the option for remote play. I think that's good too. But um, really, just the more you can do on that one device, I'm big on having a device that does multiple things. So I'd rather have a good general purpose device.
Although that doesn't necessarily bear out with your preference for Mac over a PC in terms of your gaming versus computing needs. But I understand the ecosystem. I just wanted to poke fun a little bit because of what you just
Yeah,
said.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah, I guess I would. Okay, because here's what I picture in my head when I think about like a gaming phone is that how what the DS Lite looked like. You remember DS
yeah,
Lites and that size? I think
yeah.
I think considering how good mobile technology is, like looking at my iPhone XS right now and thinking like if you could fit the dimensions of this into the top of that phone, and if you had that space with the DS Lite, if you took just the actual case of the DS Lite, and I wonder I could probably look up someone's mod for this or something. Maybe they've done something. That'd be really cool to see. I could see if someone had taken the time to actually put like all the controls of like the Vita into the bottom of the DS of a DS Lite, and then the top screen was just bigger in HD and like that. Like with all that extra space, I feel like you could have a really powerful smartphone and gaming phone in that, and it's still small enough that you can carry it in your pocket. It doesn't have to be super thin. It's okay. I think the DS Lite's form factor was very pocket friendly. It's a little bit bigger than what some people would like to carry, especially considering the where smartphones went. Now they went super thin, then they're finally getting thicker, and I've always thought it's okay to be a little thicker with the with the phones. Take that how you will, folks. Um, yeah, so that's what I picture in my head is like a gaming phone where the gear is tucked into the form factor of a DS Lite, and I think you can get away with it. Even the DSi. Look at the DSi because they slimmed it out and sleeked that out a little bit more, and the DSi I think was just a little bit bigger than the DS Lite. So
Let I
yeah,
got it. I got it though. Let me offer an alternative form
yeah,
factor.
sure, sure.
I Do you remember the Droid? How it had like the slide out keyboard?
Mm-hmm.
They and there were other phones like that. I think having the controls slide out from underneath the phone would be better because like if I'm using a phone and I'm just like web browsing, I want to put it in my hand. I don't want to have to worry about a folded piece on the back because really like if it's a clamshell folding device for the phone, how are you going to use it to text? Are you just going to fold it so the thing is on the back and then have like the controllers pushing into your hand as you're holding it? I think the way you're describing would not make it as usable as a mobile device for texting, for web browsing. So I think if you're gonna have to, if you want to combine both the controls and the phone into one, I think
I'm trying to
I
show you.
can't.
I'm trying to show you the Xperia Play. I'll just text you the thing
Yeah,
because
I
what you
think I think it's got to be a slide out form factor.
yeah, what you're describing is that you would rather have what Xperia Play was going for. The only problem the Xperia Play had, other than like its shoulder buttons sucked, and that's a design thing that can be remedied, is they to do the dual analog they used two touchpads. And while touchpads I have a place, using those for a complete analog stick replacement, and I know my, my one buddy would argue with me because he loves the Steam controller and he thinks the touchpads are completely superior. I agree the touchpad is superior as a right analog stick. I disagree with it as superior on the left. And I'm the weirdo. I loved the 3DS's slide pad. Other than it didn't have enough grip to keep your finger on it, didn't have like a ridge. It ended up being like super smooth and like my thumb would constantly slide off it. But I loved the flat motion to it, and I loved having that as like the analog stick. And if they made it a little bit more, with a little bit better, what's that word for, how it can move around. If they made it a little more accurate for moving around, that would be, you could do it. You could totally do it. Not
Yeah,
the
I agree. I like that too. That and the PSP little nub were good too. I
PSP's
like the
pad one
PSP.
sucked. It was too small. It was an awkward position. It also felt like it had too much tension, and it didn't slide around like freely enough. It felt like if you committed to a direction, you committed. It doesn't feel like an analog stick where you can kind of like move it around and you've got that like freedom. Um, but yes,
Maybe I don't remember it that well. Maybe I don't remember it that well.
yeah, and we could have two different feelings on it. It could just be completely personal. That's just the way. Like I liked the grip on the nub pad, but I thought it was for the PSP's slide pad, but it was too small and it was in an awkward position. The PSP I think was awkwardly designed as well, but that's technology at that time, so I can't give it. I don't want to give it too much crap because I think it was on the right track. Vita obviously was on the right track as well, and that was the thing. Like the little thumbsticks didn't have enough. They didn't have enough travel to them, so that was an issue as well. But yeah, I think the Xperia slide pad controls. I don't disagree with you. I think clamshell's nice because I do like to protect the screen, but you do make a good point there for like the whole touching to tech for typing on the screen there. Makes a lot of sense. And who knows, maybe it could make a more recessed controls. I've seen some like concept art for that kind of style there. But yes,
I don't think it will ever happen with iPhone though. They're very
not with
opposed
iPhone,
to
no.
having all these. No, it's not going to happen.
But we don't need
Never.
Apple to do it for it to take off. You get like one or two good Android phones with like some good software support and a more secure marketplace that developers want to invest in. It'll take off. It'll work. These are solvable issues. So yeah, I guess to end the episode, we think mobile gaming has done some pretty good stuff. It's got some really interesting stuff coming up in the future. We want to see it do better. Mobile, smartphones are not going anywhere. They're only getting better or changing into devices that are more handy and more capable of gaming. There's been some unfortunate side effects when it comes to the business models, warping quality down and making the market more volatile in some situations and de-incentivizing creativity. But that reality is often a grayscale, and there somewhere in the middle is the truth. So we want to see more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff. We think it's worthwhile. Hopefully, we'll keep seeing more accessories and whatnot. Now I want to do like a Kickstarter dive and just look for all these things there. And this also concludes our series of the platform discussions. Of course, Other things will come up. Um, I know that some people may be clamoring, like, hey, what about VR? That's like a whole other platform. The only reason we're not doing that is we haven't had enough experience collectively with VR to really discuss it. I feel like, but we'll continue to keep an eye on it. And once we reach a point where we feel like VR, we have enough experience with VR to really talk about it, then that may be part of the next round of platforms. Or we'll do an episode at some point when it makes the most sense for us
Come
to
on,
talk
you're
about it.
saying I haven't had enough experience? I had the Labo VR, like the best VR.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Ed, this has been fun. I was looking forward to this one. There's so much there, and we'll be getting back to our normal stuff, and we'll see what else. There's also some, we got a bit off topic, but so much overlaps with mobile gaming.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, so much of mobile gaming is like seeping into mainstream AAA games, which maybe that's why we're worried.
Yeah, the bad parts, not the good parts, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Some of the good stuff, but not as much of it as we like, and not the best parts. So yeah, it's it's been fun. Thank you so much to our audience for listening. Feel free to check all the other episodes. And next week, I think our topic's going to be turn-based versus real-time action of gameplay. This is something me and Ed have playfully had a bunch of conversations and arguments about over time. Just kind of try to push each other's buttons, but it's yeah, we're actually going to get into it, and we're going to have a nice, fun discussion about the merits of both, pros and cons, and so on. Once again, reiterating from the start of the podcast, we are on a bunch of different platforms. We're now on podcast distribution platforms besides just being on YouTube. So please listen, download wherever you like, subscribe, and comment if you do or don't, and let us know how we can adjust. We're always looking for new topic suggestions and things to think about, and we'll try to get some more information. But everyone, take care and be well until the next time.
Bye.